Hey, what is going on? It's Specimen. We have got the patch notes for the expansion tomorrow, all the reworks and buffs. There's an absolute ton to get through here, so I'm going to do this as quickly and as succinctly as possible, while also still going into a decent amount of depth. But I am going to rush myself a wee bit, because otherwise I'm going to be talking for 45 minutes to an hour. So let's try and do it in 20 minutes. That's the target. There's a bit of stuff here that I'll let you read at your own leisure that's just about keywords and general changes. But the first big change is Frost, Fog, and Fog. Frost, Fog, and Rain were 7 provisions for 4 turns. They are now 5 provisions for 3 turns. So they're 6 points for 5 provisions. Pretty interesting. I like the change. Big fan. I think they'll see a bit more play. Dragon's Dream, Skelliger, Storm stay the same, but Ragnarok has a big change. It's no longer just a fog on steroids, but it spawns Cataclysm, which all Cataclysm is, it's the row effect for Ragnarok, which splits 3 damage randomly between all units on this row. And that lasts for 4 turns. So it's 12 points if you're not hitting armor. Obviously, some potential synergy there with things like Wild Boar of the Sea, stuff like that. Probably come to mind straight away. So 10 provisions, 12 points. Seems decent. Next up, Weather Clears deleted. Adios, goodbye. Weather Clears no longer a thing because you can play around weather. Their reasoning here is you can play around weather with things like armor, with shield, with movement, which I fully agree. Weather's a really interesting mechanic for that reason. So they've decided to balance weather on not being removed, deleting the weather removal, as opposed to making it really good and requiring everyone to run a Pella, a Bomb Heaver, and a Clear Skies in their deck, because that wouldn't be very fun, let's be honest. So I really like the direction they're going with this. Hopefully they can find something similar with artifacts, but I'm not sure you can necessarily as well as weather, because weather is far more interactive. But I digress. Clear Skies is now 5 provisions and boosts all units on your row by 1, so it's like a mini Bone Talisman. This card's pretty damn good. 9 points pretty consistently for 5 provisions. Also Visigoth synergy potentially there as well. I think this card could be really very good in Swarm based decks. Iris is now 7 provisions and gives Vitality, 4 Vitality, which they say is like kind of unique for a neutral card. I wish Iris had a slightly more interesting ability. Avalak gets a nerf because obviously he's spawning that rain, fog, etc., which is now just 6 points as opposed to the 8 points it was before. He does get a point buff, so he's slightly better tempo. It takes less turns to get his full value, but ultimately he's losing a point, which is, you know, pretty upsetting. Skept of Storms is 6 provisions. That is spawning a fog, a rain, or a frost of your choice, so it's a bit more flexible. And Scout is a 5 provision soldier, now with 5 power, that has a veil. Not really too much there. The Shoop row effects, I don't honestly know what's changed. I was trying to work it out. But Shoop Mage now has spawned a random row effect on all rows for 3 turns. And Hunter has spawned a random row effect on enemy row for 3 turns. Thor, which was a weather removal, is now boosting an allied unit by 4 and giving it Veil. This card is very good, man. This card on a Keltulis, for example. Oh boy. I think this card's going to find play in quite a few like unitless decks. On Johnny as well, this card is potentially very, very strong in my opinion. Imagine like your opponent poisons your, like let's just say Johnny, right, in like a red drain Gord list. Then you use Thor on it, it gives it Veil, so it can't be poisoned again, it can't be locked, it can only be destroyed. Damn, I think this card is low-key top tier for a 4 provision card. We'll see though, we will see. Olgierd is now 7 power. Let me just show you the Olgierd here. I am going to look at the neutral cards next, and there's quite a few that honestly I've just not seen in a long time. So I thought it would make sense to show you. So I don't think this card's very good yet, but it's 7 power, so no harm in buffing it, right? Up next, we have also got Morale. Morale is now row locked, so if he poisons in the first turn, then you can move him and he won't be able to poison again. Big nerf to him, love this change. Would still say he's going to be very good in Scoia'tael because you've got cards like Malenia that can just move him back. He's still really good in certain decks though, but it's going to be nice to just not see him as much maybe in Nilfgaard. But then again, Nilfgaard's got so many row-locked units anyway that you might just be able to shove him in anyway. But I like this change. This is probably my favourite change so far though. As much as I love the morale change, giving Regis initiative is massively needed. I've played around with Regis quite a bit this season, and instantly I felt like with Spies, he was going to be pretty easy to abuse. He's just the perfect card to have initiative on. I was kind of surprised when I saw he didn't, so I'm really glad they've preempted this change. Spies plus Regis can be really scary, I think. So, yeah, really happy. We've got Amra's Workshop, which is now 5 provisions. Is this like a... Honestly, again, this is why I'm going to look. So it was 6 provisions. That's Armory. Okay, Amra's Workshop. Boost 3 adjacent units by 2 and give the 1 armor. Okay, this card's not bad at all, right? On like Scarabs, for example, for 5 provisions. That's pretty good, no? It's a bronze card. It's 6 points and 3 armor. So, yeah, this card's not bad at all. I'm really glad that this is a 5 provision card now. They might actually see some play. Xavier Lemming's power change from 5 to 6. So Xavier, of course, being the card that is moving things from the graveyard, deleting them from the graveyard. He is now 6 power, so nice little buff to Xavier. He's a cool card. Crystal Skull, boost increased from 3 to 4. Crystal Skull is a stratagem that purifies, so I love to see this getting a buff. Obviously, Magic Lamp is just all over the gaff at the moment, so having a bit more diversity in these, yeah, is nice. Cyprian Wali is now 8 provisions. Stella's going to be happy with that because I know Stella loves this card, Cyprian Wali. Iris's Companions, provision change from 8 to 7. So a classic card that has not seen play in a long time. 7 provisions for this card is really nice. I'm loving all these changes. They sort of say down here that another round of slight buffs to neutral cards that have decent effects, but their stats drag them down, and I'm liking this. Lady of the Lake, power change from 6 to 7. Lady of the Lake coming in with a shield and then can give a shield as well. And Manticore Venom provision changed from 10 to 9. So Manticore Venom is an organic card that damages by 10? Damages 3 units by 3. Wow, this is potentially really good at 9 provisions. It's 9 damage, but kind of flexible. I don't think it's going to see loads of play, but it would be nice to see it in Araka Swarm decks potentially, because obviously you've got that organic synergy. Again, just nice. So far with the neutral cards, love all the changes, man, especially the weather ones and just buffing these kinds of cards. I think this Armorer's Workshop's really nice, and I really like the route they've gone with Weather Clears. I do think the card to look out for, my instant impressions is Clear Skies, I think is really very good. But as I mentioned before, I think Thor could see a lot of value on a lot of different cards. Boosting it by 4 and giving it Veil for 4 provisions. Let me double check it is 4 provisions. It is. That is really very, very, very good. If you look at like other 4 provision specials that are neutral, they all kind of suck, right? There's Spores, you've got Golden Froth. They're the only 2 good ones. Everything else sucks. So to have this Thor doing so well at 4 provisions for a special is really nice. There's also the boost by 6 and give it Doomed card. That's a new special. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, really, really good cards. I think that's going to be a big buff to decks like Kelly that don't want to use many units. Also buffs to Grodd decks and stuff like that. Really interesting, man. On to monsters. Basically, Elf is the primary category for Wild Hunt cards. Second category is Wild Hunt, nothing dramatic. Wild Hunt Hound, primary category set to Beast. Okay, no change there. Imrus Race, second category changed to Wild Hunt. Now Gafar also changed to Wild Hunt. So Wild Hunt is now a second category, and all Wild Hunt units have gotten primary categories to match their race. Did you know most of them were elves? Hashtag lore. I actually did. Oh my god. Crimson Curse. Provision change from 9 to 10. This is an interesting one, guys. Ability change 2. Spawn Blood Moon on enemy row for 5 turns and spawn 2 Ekimaras. So Crimson Curse was on your side of the board. It's now on your opponent's, and it's got bleed synergy with Oriana. So at the start of owner's turn, give a random unit on this row bleeding 2. If unit was already bleeding, damage it by 2 instead. So you're using it on your opponent's side of the board. It's going to bleed an enemy by 2 for 5 turns. But if it's already bleeding, it damages it by 2. Obviously, you've got that Oriana synergy, but also, very importantly, it spawns 2 Ekimaras on your side of the board in the opposite row. So it plays for 6 tempo, maybe 5 if it's going to bleed, most likely first, right? So 5 instant tempo is much nicer, right? It is 10 provisions, but remember, it's an organic card as well, so you can tutor this card. You obviously get a Rakus drone as well if you're playing it in AQ, and overall, it's 5 turns, 10 points, plus the Ekimaras, 14 points for 10 provisions, not including the synergies. Crimson Curse looks absolutely beautiful. I'm loving all the weather vibes, man. So let's see what they say. Crimson Curse was always quite difficult to make use of, as it required a sacrifice, specific deck composition, and some time to gain value. Now it spawns Ekimaras on play, making it faster, and Blood Moon synergizes better with what vampires want to do as an archetype, by becoming an offensive, long-lasting row effect that applies bleeding or deals damages when the target is already bleeding. I love it! Very nice. Foglet and Wild Hunt Rider get a change where essentially if I've got 2 riders in my deck and I use a rune stone and find a rider, it's going to call both of the riders from my deck, not just one. Now that's important because Oberon is creating or playing a random Wild Hunt unit. So if you've got 2 riders in your deck and you find a rider off Oberon, it's going to call them both in and not just one. And Foglet gets that change too. Gels has basically swapped with Weavis' incantation. Unfortunately, both these cards suck, but maybe the old Gels, which is now Weavis, might be good. So that's the Death Wish one. And Gels, importantly, obviously Wild Hunt. Let's have a look what he does now. He is discarding a unit and boosting self by its power, then drawing a card. It's 10 provisions. It didn't see any play before as Weavis Incantation. I doubt it sees any play now, just because it's got that Wild Hunt tag, which can give you 1 extra point on Oberon in round 3 in Devotion decks. I don't think either of these cards see any play. But I'm glad that Gels gets a rework to have a bit more synergy, because obviously that dominance theme. But I still think he's pretty bad. We'll see though. You never know. Skelliger. Okay, how are we doing for time? We're 11 minutes in. We're doing all right. We've got Northern Realms coming up soon as well. I don't think I see any Kudu deck change. Skelliger. So a few things get the raid category. A couple of things get the warrior. Onquake Warrior. This was the card that I mean, Warrior is probably not going to help us. Okay. It's the card that at the moment it does 1 damage, and then if played from the graveyard, damage by 3. What the card is now doing is it's giving 3 bleeding, and if played from the graveyard, damage by 3. So essentially, it's instead of damaging by 1 from your hand, it's bleeding by 3 instead. So nice change. Mask of Uberos is now spawning a crow, so adds 2 points onto that. Love it. Okay. Not really any spectacular changes, but 2 good changes nevertheless. We've got my favourite faction, the Northern Realms. Yep, Engineering Solution is now buffing by 4. Molto bene. Obviously, a buff to Radia as well. But moreover, just it's nice to see these stratagems seeing more play overall. I like it. This is a big old buff here to the Drummer. It was a 6 provision card. It's now 5 with 3 power, 1 armor instead of 4 power. So it's this card is going to be good. It's a great target for Adalia. It's a great target for reinforcements. It's a soldier, so it could get Ronvid out. It's got that synergy with round 3 Viraxus. Yeah, this card's really nice, man, at 3. But it is in range of the dreaded, the feared, the disgusting Amnesty. That's a bit scary, but we'll see. War Elephant, bro, this card is suddenly one of the first things I want to try out when the patch drops. It's doing the exact same thing, but if crewed, in other words, if it's got a soldier to the left, a soldier to the right, it's a little hot pocket for the Siege Elephant, the War Elephant. It's going to boost by 8. I repeat, 8 instead. So if you've got Ronvid and maybe like a heavy cavalry either side, and you use your War Elephant, it's going to 24 points. Bruh. 24! Mad. You can use Viraxus on this as well. So Viraxus suddenly becomes pretty crazy in a short round with War Elephant. Obviously, big downside being it goes pretty damn tall. But I love it, man. I feel like maybe War Elephant with Kian could be a nice little combo because, you know, you're not going to have that many tool removals. So if you go for Kian, you can. That's a nice Viraxus target. You could go War Elephant. That's a nice Viraxus target. If your opponent uses their tool removal on one, they can't really use it on the other. So I'm definitely looking forward to trying this out. On to Squirtle. Harmony. I'm really rushing because I'm at 15 minutes. 20 minutes is the target. Harmony is deleted. It's not. It's just not a whole archetype itself anymore, right? Basically, Harmony now is boosting self only on the row. So if I was to play a Dryad in the front and then I was to play a Dwarf at the back, my Dryad would not buff. If I was to then play another Dwarf in the front, it still wouldn't buff. So it still works exactly the same, but the boosts only trigger the Harmony boost if you play the thing in the same row as the Harmony. So, in other words, if you want to play double Waters of Broccoli in the same round, they've got to go in a row, and you're going to get Igni, son. So, Harmony's still not bad, but it's not just going to be this all-in deck. And I think that's great, man, because Harmony is super strong, but it's very easy to play when compared to other decks, because you're very limited in your choices, because you need to get your Harmony things down, then you play a tag, another tag, another tag. Jobs are good, and see you later, alligator. Whereas Harmony in Squirtle decks, it's just like a subtle thing that you've got, oh, I've got a little bit of Harmony here, is pretty damn cool. So I really love this change, man. I think it's really well done. There's lots of things they could have done, but I think this is absolutely brilliant. So I think congratulations on that one. I still think Harmony is going to be a really good tag keyword to have. You're just not hopefully going to build your whole deck around it. Obviously Mystic Echo is not as good anymore. Maybe that just finds some provisions. I think this is great, man. I love it. I really am a big fan. Dryad Enchantress, ability change to deploy on melee, give an allied unit 3 armor, or on ranged, give it vitality. So this is the one that was giving vitality depending on armor. So it's pretty much only ever played this card from a Runestone. Can't spell Dryad apparently. Dryad. So it's this one. Give vitality to an allied unit for the number of turns equal to its armor. It was pretty good pull off Runestone, but apart from that it sucked. And it's now giving 3 armor in the front row, 5 base power, or vitality in the back row for 3. So it's a pretty damn good card, man. Saskia gets a massive rework, and this is quite a complicated one, but bear with me. She can spawn, you've got a choice of 3 things: a Elven Deadeye, a Rowdy Dwarf, or a Young Dryad. Young Dryad is a Symbiosis 2 power, Elven Deadeye is a 3 power elf, Rowdy Dwarf is a 2 power dwarf. Okay? But you also get an extra bonus for whichever one. So if you spawn the Deadeye, it damages a random enemy unit by 2, so the Deadeye is going to play for 5. Saskia is 6 base power, I do believe. Yep, 5 base power, and she's a dragon, by the way, which is very cool. I do need to rush here because I'm running out of time. So pretty damn good card. If you play a Rowdy Dwarf, it boosts it by 3 and gives 1 armor, and a Young Dryad gains vitality, so really cool. A Glace is now 4 power, so she gets a nice buff. Onto Nilfgaard, the Arbalest changes because obviously the squirrel is replacing it. Its power has changed from 4 to 3, and now is on deploy, giving bleeding 3 to an enemy unit. And Conspiracy, damage it by 3 instead, so if you target a spy. Needed a change with Old Matey. This is an interesting one. Emissary, provision change from 5 to 4. Ability change to Disloyal. Deploy, boost an allied unit by 6. So it's 4 provisions. It was boosting by 7 before, right? So we've got 2 4 provision spies now, with the Emissary being in the game. Yeah, so I love that change. 4 provision Emissary is really nice. Empyrean Forces are now 4 power instead of 3, but they just deal 1 damage instead of 2, which I think is pretty damn good because they could have been scary. Rain Farm is now 5 power and 7 provisions, and on deploy he's damaging an enemy unit by 2. And Conspiracy means he increases damage by 2. So if you target a spy, it's damaging by 4. Stefan also cannot spawn like new tactics. They get doomed. Essentially, it can't. You can't get double cut the grass. Darlin Soldier, 5 provisions. That's a really nice change. Congregation ability changed. Now this is the crime card that was. If you had no coins, spawn 3 Zealots. If you did have coins, it would spawn 2. It gets a rework, which is kind of a nerf to crime decks, but I understand why they've gone for it. You still spawn 2 Zealots in a row, but if you already have a Firesworn in that row, it's going to spawn all 3. Penance now can be used for all Firesworn tokens, not just Zealots. Sacred Flame gets a big change because this card could have been super scary. It's now, it's an artifact, by the way, 9 provisions now. Spawning a Firesworn Zealot on both sides of the card, and the order on it is boost all units on this row by 1. So essentially the problem with this card would have been there's now the card that consumes everything on that 1 row, and has immunity for 4 provisions in Syndicate. If Sacred Flame was still buffing everything you spawned, it would just be absolutely outrageous. So there's the time. We finished. Here's all the patch notes. I am about to record a podcast. That's why I was in a rush towards the end. I pretty much covered everything there. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you tomorrow. Oh, it's time, man. It's time. Nice one.